Hello, everybody, and welcome, welcome, welcome. Much thanks to the Maharaja Flamenco Trio there for the music. And welcome, everybody. Go ahead and share in the chat where you're joining us from. I'll be viewing the webinar chat, and I will be contributing to the webinar chat. So keep your eyes on the chat to engage, interact, participate, as well as to receive some of the resources that I'll be sharing through the chat. My name is Ramin Yazdanpana, and I have the pleasure to present our webinar today, our IPDAE Webinar Wednesday, Creating a Community of Learning Through Task and Project-Based Activities. So we'll be covering, some of the 5 W's and how in around this subject of task and project-based activities to create community within the classroom and beyond the classroom. So we'll be discussing why it's important to consider some specific attributes that adults bring to the classroom, and to leverage, these attributes, to leverage these strengths to meet their needs and their goals. We'll also be discussing how we can utilize research and frameworks for teaching and learning that guide learners beyond being knowledgeable to being knowledge able. Okay, so we'll discuss what that means in greater detail. We'll also discuss approaches to task and project-based learning to develop greater learning autonomy, as well as greater cooperation and collaborative skills. And as I mentioned before, throughout the presentation, I will provide relevant resources that you can look at to continue to learn and explore and share with your community of adult educators. So hello, everyone. I see we have just a great showing here today from all different kinds of programs across the beautiful Sunshine State, Palm Beach County, Tallahassee, Broward, correctional facilities, community colleges, all across. So I just want to recognize you all and just say thank you. Thank you for taking the time to invest in your own professional learning and growth. You all are leaders. You all are here to receive information, to share, right? To share with your learners, to share with your colleagues. So thank you. Thank you for your leadership, your time and attention. Okay, we even have some from Virginia and North Carolina. So hello to our neighboring states. Okay. So before we jump into the content, if you have a question, please type it into the Q&A option. As you know, your microphones are muted, so you'll only be in listen mode, but I will be asking you, as you're already perfectly engaging in the webinar chat, to continue to do so. I'll be prompting you, and I'll, as I mentioned, be sharing some resources in our chat. Today's presentation is being recorded, so thank you, Joseph, and the IPDAE crew for providing this recording later on the IPDAE website within 48 hours. And if you haven't been to the IPDAE website, take a look at the webinars there, an amazing resource list on all kinds of topics that are relevant to us adult educators. Okay, let's talk a little bit about the why, the rationale of specifically when teaching adults, right? It's important to consider some of the following attributes that adults bring to the classroom. So one is that, adults have a depth and a breadth of experiences that can support learning. So I think I'm starting with this intentionally, because we should all start with recognizing that our adults have so much knowledge, have so much experience, have so much to offer and to share, and that they bring to the classroom. So, recognizing what these funds of knowledge are, what these experiences are. One, it just is a respectful, way to engage and to learn about our students, and know how we can leverage these strengths so that they can be, as we're cultivating, right, a community of learners in the classroom. With that, adults also have, experiences that can challenge, right, that can challenge learning. and should be considered before and throughout course of instruction. So, understanding these strengths, right, and understanding these challenges are important, not only at the beginning of instruction and intake process, but throughout a course. Okay, and we'll talk a little bit about that throughout our presentation and how we can engage our students in this conversation of reflecting and sharing and building that trust, right, and rapport to reflect and to share strengths and challenges. So I'm actually going to post a resource. This is the first resource that I'm going to share with you all that discusses a little bit more about these intake processes. And this is applying research and reading instruction. This is, says it's about reading instruction, but this chapter 8 has a really helpful guide on initial assessment and instructional planning that I think could be helpful to us all. So check that out. Adults also benefit from receiving clear rationale. Okay, I think all students do, but adults, we are able to, with our life experience, we appreciate an explanation on why an activity is important and specifically how the activity and content can support learning life and work goals, right? Engaging adult learners and how learning content and competencies could be applied to their own lives is critical. We all know that just getting to the classroom is such a challenge for adults, right? We're also busy with life, with family, with work, you name it. So, having a clear rationale, clear objectives and goals that we can present to students that we're clear about as educators ourselves and that we can then present, and connecting those dots and saying, okay, now that we know what your strengths are, what your challenges, what your goals are, this is how today's lesson, this week's lesson, this month's lesson, and so on are going to work towards meeting those goals and leveraging those strengths, right? So this reflection and envisioning of how skills can be relevant and can be applied can motivate learners, right? By increasing focus, by clearly seeing the benefits of the time and effort that is needed to achieve their goals. So, stating this, of course, we state this in a course syllabus, but I would go beyond that and do this on a daily, classroom level of saying, okay, this is where we've come from. This is where we are, this is where we're going, and always be engaged in the discussion of, how can we leverage your strengths and how does this instruction and learning work towards meeting your goals and supporting you, all right, and your goals. So similarly, adults tend to be solution oriented, particularly around the challenges that are more immediate. Of course, it's so important to have goals just as like passing, the GED or getting some kind of technical certificate or, getting to a certain level of language competency. All very important. They all take a long time or they take more time, right, than generally is allowed. It's not a week thing. It's not a 7-week thing. It's usually beyond a term, right? So these can be longer term goals. So having some shorter term and meeting more immediate goals is so important, right? This can, again, engage students and when we're meeting these more immediate goals, more short-term goals, students see how instruction, how learning, how the time, energy, and effort that they are investing is having an immediate effect. And that leads to greater persistence in learning. Right. So if learners aren't seeing how that this, instruction, how this learning, how this time and energy is meeting these goals, it's hard. It's hard to keep the motivation going. So I just wanted to ask you a question here. I'm going to post it in the chat. There are actually 2 questions. So the first question is, what is a more immediate life challenge or short-term goal of your adult learners? So if you can just you can be one word, just right off the top of your head, what is a more immediate life challenge or short-term goal of your adult learners? If you can share that in the chat, so we can all kind of get an idea of our learners and some of their goals and challenges. Thank you, Chad. Yeah, getting there you go, getting a job. All right. So how can you get a job? And so that can affect. Okay, what do we need to do immediately that is showing that we're working towards getting that job? What is the job? How can we work towards getting it? You know, is that job attainable right now? What jobs are attainable in the short term? Yeah, employment advancement, time management. Okay, great. So that is a challenge of that all adults have, all right, myself included. So what are some strategies, some approaches that we can apply to in that case? Time management. So you can see how some of these are I wouldn't say that they are short term or immediate life challenges. For example, like completing their education, that's a bit broad and that's a bit longer term. Okay, so when we are trying to identify these immediate life challenges or short term goals, we want to be specific. And we want to make sure that it's kind of defining what immediate is, right? So that can be things like, time management or balancing work and school, things that, maybe being able to more clearly communicate with their child's educator, these kinds of things, right? All of the other things are important as well. Obviously, taking the GED, getting a job, completing their education, all very important. But the point here is just also to work on more immediate and short-term goals, not only these longer-term goals that our programs generally, are focused on, right? And so the second question is that I have for you, and I'm going to post in the chat, and thank you all for your contributions, is how is your program and instruction helping them with this immediate challenge or to meet this goal, right? So that can be something that you may have an answer to right now. It may be something that you don't have an immediate answer to, or you're working on. Okay, and that's fine too. But I think that it's a question that we should always write down and have in mind when we're planning, saying, okay, how is my instruction for this week, for this term, helping them to meet their immediate challenges and to meet their short, medium, and long-term goals? All right. So this, of course, leads us to the need for adults to have real-world practical application of the skills they're learning in the classroom. Many of our programs have career-focused programs, and that's fantastic, right? I know some of my colleagues are working in IET programs. That's wonderful. There's a clear kind of pathway to, developing competency to meet the demands of the tests and to get certified to you name it, right? So for those of us that do not have that kind of program, that are more general, we're going to have to identify these practical applications. And this is a collaborative and ongoing process between teachers and learners. So again, this can be done through exit tickets, such as a short questionnaire that's done at the end of the week of every week, a KWL chart, right? What do we know? What do we want to know, and what have we kind of learned, right? So it can also be something like, what do we feel confident that we've learned about? What is an area that we don't feel so confident about? And what do we want to learn? So anything to get feedback, to elicit feedback. This isn't only, important for our instruction that can guide our instruction to meet these immediate goals and needs of our students. But it's also developing the learner autonomy by getting students to think about and be a part of the process of their own education. So cultivating this learner autonomy, cultivating this understanding of how to learn, of the strategies of learning. So we've mentioned some of them as far as work-life balance, scheduling, understanding best approaches to learning a language, or studying for math, these kinds of strategies. So it goes beyond just the content and the knowledge, to more kind of metacognitive aspects of learning and understanding the learning process itself and our place in that process, who we are as learners, and how do we want to grow as learners, and how can we practice that and apply those skills in the classroom so that we feel confident to apply them outside of the classroom. So I'm just going to take a break here and read some of these responses here. Rob, thank you. Rob says we offer student support services to assist students with many aspects of meeting goals. The trouble is getting them to take advantage of these resources. Yes. Okay. So we'll talk a little bit about that as well. So that's a challenge that we all have, Rob. I think that's true for everybody, right? The challenge is getting ourselves to take advantage of resources that are out there. So we're all in this together. Anthea says, I teach business, so there in my program, we work towards certification. Excellent, Anthea. Thank you for sharing that. And Anna says, we offer students educational materials and instructional support in addition to other services and resources to help them meet their goals. Thank you, Anna. So thank you for sharing all that. Please continue to share what your programs are doing well, because we can all learn from each other. You know, different programs are doing things in different ways. It's always nice to learn from each other. That's really what we're here for. Okay, so I'm just going to post in the chat a resource here as far as exit tickets. So it's just good to kind of have different ideas, right, for exit tickets and just to mix it up a little bit. So that's a resource for you. Please let me know if you're receiving these resources and by just saying yes or no in the chat for me. I like to provide these extra bonus resources here for those who attend live. So thank you for being here and attending live. Okay, adults are also motivated by intrinsic motivation. And I like to think about this as like what topics and goals pull us, right? What topics and goals pull learners to want to do and learn something? All right, so you know what I mean by this. It's like you feel pulled to something. You get excited about it. You have all these other things, but it doesn't feel like a chore. It doesn't feel like a burden when you're engaged in that task. You know, when you're engaged with that topic, when you're working towards that certification. So what is that, right? What are these intrinsic motivators of your students? So that's something to discuss, okay? What are their intrinsic motivations? And once we've kind of identified those intrinsic motivators, how can that guide us in our instruction and providing those resources, right? That was described here, that our programs provide. Oftentimes those are kind of individualized. So, you know, being able to get this, it's a two-way street, right? Understanding what those motivators are, those intrinsic motivators, and collaborating to try to find those kind of resources. With that said, we all benefit from external motivation. So this can and should be done in a myriad of ways, such as supportive and constructive feedback, constant reminders that the challenges and failures are not only natural, but necessary to learning. So I think this is an important aspect that we have to keep in mind, that it's hard, you know, it's hard. It's hard to learn. There can be, you know, strengths that we bring as adults to the learning process, yes, but we also have a lot of challenges, right? That we're faced with: time, access, you know, just responsibilities, additional responsibilities. So, and just, you know, our ego, right? And feeling maybe, you know, wow, you know, is it too late? Am I too old for this? Can I do this, you know, at this age? So really engaging and addressing the mental well-being, the emotional well-being, you know, providing this external motivation, discussing external motivators is so important. It's so important to just keep, you know, the persistence going, to stay engaged in the learning process. It's so easy to drop out. It's so easy to just say, I'm tired, I can't do this anymore, this isn't for me. You know, we have to remind our students constantly that the challenges they're facing, the failures, are not only natural but necessary to learning. So reminding that, and they know that. We all know that as adults. We've all experienced failures. We've all know that you have to fail in order to learn, right? You have to make mistakes in order to learn. It's very important to remind each other of that. So as adults, we also benefit tremendously from structure, particularly because of the busy and varied schedules that many of us have. So adult learners often have difficulties attending a course consistently. So knowing clearly and ahead of time what the goals, the activities, the progression of learning can help learners to kind of know, right, and to plan and to schedule, right, time accordingly, but also understanding that, as we're working towards things that are more difficult, that we're going to take it, one task at a time. And we're going to make sure that each task is manageable and that we're going to scaffold these tasks to support them, okay, until they feel confident enough to take it on their own. So making sure that we are scaffolding instruction appropriately and we're communicating that instruction of how the progression of instruction is so important. And then finally, we have cooperation and collaboration. So these are both vital skills for adults in the classroom, community, and workplace. Now, these terms are often used interchangeably, but there are important differences to keep in mind and to understand when planning instruction. So I'm gonna show us just a short video here on cooperation versus collaboration so we can understand the differences, not that one is better than the other, but keeping in mind our students, their goals, their abilities, and saying, okay, is cooperation more appropriate here, or is collaboration, or are both more appropriate? So let's see this definition here of cooperation versus collaboration.
No sounds coming through.
Oh, I'm just hearing that no sound is coming through. So let me try to, I think this video is okay, but let me see if I can share the sound. Don't you love it when that happens? Let's see here. Okay. Is audio coming through now?
No, if you share screen or application and that goes to the full screen of the video, is not going to play the music. So it's got to play outside or inside of the same share or share complete desktop.
Okay, so you can't hear it now. All right, let me move it out of here and just share here. Thank you, Joseph. Can you hear the audio now?
No, you might want to stop share and start and restart it to share.
Okay, thank you. All right, sorry about that, guys. Let me try this one more time. Okay, let's do this again.
The difference between cooperation and collaboration.
Can you hear the
Yes.
audio now? Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
Cooperation begins with mutual respect, while collaboration begins with mutual trust. Cooperation requires transparency, but collaboration requires vulnerability. Cooperation includes shared goals, but collaboration includes shared values. Cooperation is independent, but collaboration is interdependent. Cooperation is often short-term, while collaboration is often long-term. Cooperation involves the sharing of ideas as a group. However, collaboration involves generating entirely new ideas together. Both cooperation and collaboration are vital for creative work. Collaboration without cooperation can lead to groupthink, but cooperation without collaboration can lead to disunity. However, collaboration plus cooperation means deeper work, more innovation, and better quality.
Okay, let me stop the share here, do a new share. All right. Okay, so just wanted to show you that video and share that with you all, just so you can see that there are benefits for both cooperation and collaboration, and that we really just have to choose which one we want to use and which is appropriate, okay, for whatever activities that we're going to be doing. So I hope that clarified a little bit for us all about what cooperation is and what collaboration is. I know that some of our students are at different proficiency levels, right, or skill levels. So, but we still want to do group work, right? We still want to kind of engage them in cooperative kind of work. So, that could be where different students can still have roles and cooperate, but maybe it's not equal, right? And so that would be more cooperation. There's some times when it's collaborative, and that could be a little bit more advanced, of an activity. And so you're working towards maybe collaboration through cooperative activities. So all of this is really building towards, learner autonomy, cultivating learner autonomy. And that's really the ability of learners to design, implement, and draw on the resources needed for continuous learning and growth, both inside and outside of the classroom. I think this is the ultimate goal that we're trying to achieve here. Whatever we're teaching, whether it's a business, whether it's GED or whether it's ESOL, whether you're in corrections or, at a college, we're all trying to build learner independence, learner autonomy, trying to instill and cultivate the mindset and the skill set for students to be able to engage in learning on their own. Even if they're coming to class every day, even if they're coming to class 8 hours a day, it's still not enough, okay? Learners need to be able to engage in learning on their own, develop that love for learning, that curiosity for learning, and understanding these strategies to apply to the learning process. And this is learning for life. We're all here. We're all continuing to learn. Here we are learning together, okay? And so, modeling this, I would share with your students, hey, I attended this webinar today to engage in my own professional learning. Share that, share what you're learning, share how you're learning, and have that discussion with your students. Thank you, Anna, for that feedback. I'm glad that the resources are helpful. So I'd like to read this quote here by Michael Wesch, professor of cultural anthropology. And Michael says, this new media environment can be enormously disruptive to our current teaching methods and philosophies. As we increasingly move toward an environment of instant and infinite information, it becomes less important for students to, and I added this, to only know, memorize, or recall information, and more important for them to be able to find, sort, analyze, share, discuss, critique, and create information. They need to move from being simply knowledge to being knowledge able. Okay, so I really love that term, from being simply knowledgeable, which is important, but being knowledge able. So doing something with that knowledge, being able to create something, be able to apply that in some kind of way, right? So we all know, first it was the internet, and it made knowledge easier and easier to access. Wonderful. Now we're in this generation of artificial generative intelligence and beyond, and that's going to be even easier, right? To call up, to organize information. Okay, so fantastic. The skill sets that we need to develop therefore is, how can we apply this information to meet our learners' goals, society's goals, community's goals and needs, right? And so if we're able to have those kind of skills and cultivate those skills now, that they're going to be an asset, right? That's going to be a skill set that they're going to be able to apply to their own lives, as well as support, their employers or their own business in the future. So let's analyze some frameworks that can help us to plan for instruction that equips students to have greater abilities to apply knowledge in creative and useful ways. Let me know what you think about that quote here. Do you think that's relevant? Do you think that's right on? This quote is actually a bit dated. This was pre-AI. But I think that, excuse me. but I think that this quote is, as relevant now as it's ever been. Okay, so a bit of Bloom's taxonomy. So many of you may have seen Bloom's taxonomy, and this is basically a kind of a way to. Originally, it was developed as a way to. As an instructional design tool to analyze and evaluate learning, right? And to identify gaps in learning, for example. But what it does, it organizes learning across these lower order thinking skills, or lots, and higher order thinking skills, or HOTS. Now, I don't want us to look at this and say, HOTS are better than lots, okay? You can see this arrow here, right? It's pointing up and down and left and right. And that's because, oftentimes, we might need to develop lower order thinking skills, these remembering things, or, understanding something, applying it at some kind of level before we can get to these higher order thinking skills, right? So, analysis, breaking down information into component parts, or evaluating something, or creating something new. Now, that doesn't mean that, understanding something is always easier than creating something. As we all know, it just depends on the topic, okay? I'm going to play this little clip here, if I can find it. There it is. That explains this, I think, really well. So let's see here. Let me see. I might need to do a new share to make sure that, and hopefully this plays. Let me see. Let me just bring my chat up and let me know if you can hear this.
The order that you see here from low to high is in terms of general.
Can you hear that? All right, great. Let me play it. Hopefully you can continue to hear it when I play it.
Low to high is in terms of general complexity, not steps to each other. That is, the levels on the lower end tend to require less interactions and considerations, and the levels on the higher end tend to have more working parts and requirements. Now, this doesn't mean that the lower levels are easier and the higher levels are more difficult. A simple or complex task can fall anywhere on the spectrum of difficulty. It just depends on the nature of the task and the ability of the learner. For example, lifting a heavy weight is pretty simple, yet can be quite difficult. On the other hand, baking a batch of cookies is somewhat complex but relatively easy to do. The levels do have varying degrees of overlap, though it's really a case-by-case thing. For example, you aren't required to name and explain all the parts of a bicycle before you learn how to ride one, and you don't need to know how to ride a bike to evaluate the quality of one. However, if you are going to fix a bicycle, you might need to know what the parts do and why before taking the steps to fix it. It all depends on the task or behavior indicated in the objective.
Okay, so I'm just gonna stop there now. I thought that was a nice kind of explanation here of Bloom's taxonomy. Okay, so this is gonna be useful to us. Understanding this Bloom's taxonomy when we're planning instruction, right? When we're thinking about, okay, what do we need to do? What kind of instructional activities do we need to design and to implement in order to get students to this knowledge able place, right? And that is to create something, okay? If that's where we're kind of deem as important, and again, this depends on the activity and the goals that we have in our courses. But if we're trying to get our students to create something, to actually apply the knowledge, and again, apply it in some kind of way to create something that's functional, that's meeting their goals, right, and their needs, then this kind of understanding of how to get our students there can be helpful. All right, and we're going to look a little bit more at some examples of how to apply this. This, I wish I could zoom in here, but I can't. But this is also a way to look at Bloom's taxonomy. You're going to be able to zoom in on this in the PowerPoint when it's shared on the IPDAE website. But you can see here knowledge comprehension, application, analysis, synthesis, evaluation, okay? And then it has certain verbs, right? Instructional verbs that you can utilize for each of the different hots or lots. And then it has on the outside some potential activities. So I just wanted to kind of share this with you as a guide that you can use to say, okay, you know, I want to kind of have students demonstrate comprehension. Okay, let's match, right? Or let's have them paraphrase something or illustrate it, okay? And then we can do that in these different kind of ways, like to record it or act it out, okay? Or write a story. So this is a nice guide, maybe a printout that you can have by your desk or, you know, wherever you plan. And it can help. It can be a useful resource in writing instructional goals and objectives. And just really quickly here, we can see, you know, going through this Bloom's taxonomy, we can see how we can apply some activities for each of these instructional goals, and some apps maybe that could be useful, right? So if we're remembering or recalling, well, we can use, you know, notes or note cards, right? That can be physical note cards, low tech, or some kind of apps using Quizlet or Duolingo, for example. Understanding, okay, or comprehension. Again, we can do quizzes, you know, polls, you know, in the classroom. I know some of us don't have access to technology, either internet or limited access anyway, in our teaching context. So they don't have to be a technical app. But if you do have access to technology and your students have access to that, you can use things like Google Forms, okay, to test comprehension, to create quizzes, you know, just to collaborate on and to allow students to demonstrate comprehension. Apply, right? So apply skills to accomplish a task. Obviously, you know, some if we're meeting the short-term or immediate goals, you know, how do you write an email? How do you gauge it in the discussion that students, you know, could benefit not only in the classroom, but you know, at work, you know, or a job that they may be working towards, right? What are some tasks that they would need to learn and that they could apply in the classroom and outside of the classroom that meet those goals, and ideally that leverage their strengths. Analysis, right? So organizing ideas into an outline. So if students obviously are studying for the GED or preparing their, you know, or writing or reading, organizing, you know, a text into, you know, how the organization is, right? How the writer has constructed it can be a good first step before asking them to create their own essay, for example, all right? And we can use things like Google Sheets, to do collaborative, you know, shared documents, use ChatGPT, for example, to produce examples that we can analyze, and then ask, you know, these tools to analyze our work to give us feedback. And then evaluate, right? So we can evaluate using a rubric. This can be helpful to teachers to provide feedback, for students to provide self-feedback, and for students to provide peer feedback. Right. And so we can also do this if we are producing something, right, to evaluate what we've created. So, you know, that can be through sharing work, sharing drafts of work, posting ideas, and then getting feedback. So we can do this, for example, through group discussions, low tech, as well as, you know, having some kind of like discussion board. And that can be through like a Facebook group or a learning management system like Canvas, for example. And then create, right? We can create something. So we can create using, you know, for example, a public service announcement. So we can do this using tools and develop some digital skills and digital literacy along the way. And so you see, I'm having to test my digital skills here with sharing. And so, you know, allowing students to practice these, presenting these things, what they created, and engaging in this process, right? So it's a cyclical kind of process. It's not just a one-way street from remembering to creating. All along the way, okay, we are applying, we are creating, we're understanding, we're evaluating. All of these things are intertwined. So this gets us to this next topic here of task and project-based learning. That can be some helpful approaches to apply what we've been talking about here. And so let's first talk about task-based learning. So first of all, before I jump into this, I don't want to say that one is better than the other. One can be more appropriate than the other. And so, learning about them, we can, you can determine which would be more appropriate for your instructional setting. So task-based learning is relevant to more immediate needs and interests. Okay, for example, I need to have a better schedule, right? My schedule right now isn't working. I'm losing a lot of time. I'm wasting a lot of time. How can I address that need? Integrated skills and competencies, completed in a short time. So this can be good for like a one class or 1 week of class. Work cooperatively or collaboratively, okay? Students manage tasks and roles within the group and support of the teacher. Completed in and outside of the classroom, ideally, right? And shared in class to focus on fluency first and then accuracy, okay? So that's true if it's anything. It doesn't need to be language. Just going for it, having a good first draft or whatever it is, analyzing it, evaluating it, get peer feedback, get self, feedback, get teacher feedback, and developing it, right? So this can be a task-based learning. Project-based learning is TBL or task-based learning plus the following. So relevant to more complex needs and interests. So these can be a little bit more longer term or a little bit more abstract, like maybe addressing some kind of issue within students' lives as far as getting access to childcare or, being able to fix something in the community, okay, that they want to, think that could be improved, or maybe even creating a business, right, a business plan and strategy. A little bit bigger here. So completed in a more extensive time, requires greater management, and really you want to work towards a public presentation of work. So the presentation is public when it's outside of the classroom. So one is, yes, you want to practice inside of the classroom, but the classroom is kind of like, the rehearsal. The public presentation, whether it's online or in person, would be to those shared with people outside of the classroom. And what happens when we present something or have to perform something for a general audience? Motivation can go up, right? Because the stakes are a little higher. And generally, in my experience, students step up, okay, to meet those in a collaborative and a cooperative way. So those can be other students in your program. It can be other teachers and administrators. It can be the community at large. So some task-based activities can be, to group or categorize kind of information, create a schedule of things, survey classmates, analyze solutions to a problem, maybe conduct a role play to accomplish a task, like, calling your child's teacher or calling an employer, things like that. And then, maybe even summarizing kind of findings. Project-based activity ideas could be something like develop a class policy, plan a budget, interview community members, document creating something. One of my colleagues had a garden, right? A community garden that they prepared at their school. So, documenting that process. Prepare and present a group presentation. Okay, I've had students present presentations on history, okay? And so, conducting some research, and sharing kind of historical aspects of like stereotypes, right? And where did those come from? And then, what's the truth of the matter, right? So developing critical thinking and analysis skills. And then produce, right? It can produce, it doesn't have to be like a presentation, like, a verbal presentation. It can be a video, it can be an audio, it can be podcast. Utilizing, again, developing these digital skills, these digital tools. So many of them are as user-friendly as they ever have been. It can be low tech. It can be, using a phone. Every phone has a video camera and an audio device. And there's always someone more techie amongst us, right? So having them help with the editing process. And again, these tools, they make it so much easier to edit. You can even just, upload a script and then have AI generated kind of actors act things out if you wanted to do that. All kinds of ideas. Again, all of these topics and approaches of how to produce and perform and present, those are up to the students. That's the fun part, all right? And that's the part that they're going to be cooperating and collaborating on. So let's look a little bit more about project-based learning. So project-based learning is this model that I'm showing you is called the gold standard for PBL, or project-based learning. And really this is presenting essential project design elements that are research informed for improving collaboration and really kind of helping to like assess, our process of creating project-based activities. So student learning goals for projects include standards-based content, as well as skills such as critical thinking, problem solving, communication, self-regulation, self-management, project management, and collaboration. So first, we can start here with the challenging problem or solution. So the project is framed by a meaningful problem to be solved or a question to answer at the appropriate level of challenge. So what I always recommend is modeling this first. So, having an example, right, of a challenging problem or question, and then kind of going through and analyzing this process of a challenge or problem solution, how you would go about inquiring about that, doing kind of research, asking people about it, and then making sure that the authenticity there, it's a real world based problem, okay? And then having students voice and choice then in saying, all right, this is a challenging problem or question. Either it can be the same one that you initially presented, or it can be a variation of that, right? So, allowing students to decide then, okay, well, let me kind of like decide what the topic is, what the challenging problem or question may be. And throughout this process, students and teachers reflect, right? They're reflecting on the effectiveness of the inquiry, on resources, on giving feedback, on providing self-feedback. So a lot of reflection on the process. What are the challenges? What are the difficulties? What are some solutions to that? That could be finding content, information. It can be, applying certain tools and resources. So you can see how this project-based learning, it's longer term, okay? It can be difficult. It can be challenging because it is longer term. So we also have to think so much about how we're going to schedule and plan things out so that it's managed appropriately, right? And so we can also need to make sure that we're applying the content from our classes to, and integrating them in a way to where students are taking that content, that knowledge, and applying them to address this challenging problem, a question. So from there, it's like, okay, we're working on the first draft here, right? And this is where the critique and revision comes in. So building skills for students to be able to self-analyze, give self-feedback, to give peer feedback, to give constructive feedback, right? In a polite and respectful way. And all of that is going towards preparing for this public product. I know it's scary, okay? It's hard, it's uncomfortable. Preparing for this presentation, it's not always easy, but knowing that I need to prepare to serve the needs of the audience, that is great. That's great professional motivation, right? That's great motivation to learn, to research, to prepare, and to present. So, all building up to this, and then it's not done there, just saying, okay, you presented, how was it, right? What went well? Celebrate that. What could you do differently next time? Okay, so I have this chart here. Actually, let me back up here a little bit. I just wanted to share this here, this resource. Let me see here. Here we go. So this is a resource. I'm going to put it in the chat here. All right, and this is 100 project-based learning ideas. So I'm just going to scroll here a little bit and just to where it gets to the topics. Excuse my scroll. but a lot of good information you can find here as well, and 100 project-based learning ideas. And as we're going through here, I just want to ask you if you can share in the chat, if you've done any kind of project-based learning, what topics did you do? If you can share that in the chat with us. So we have things like creating a community garden, discussing renewable kind of energies, board game design, science fair, photography, discussing environmental impacts in the community, a cooking class, some kind of community service. A lot of our students are community oriented. So what can be some community service? Music production. I played some music at the beginning of our presentation. That was a collaborative effort between me and my bandmates, okay, Maharaja Flamenco Trio. So we perform, right? And having a public presentation performance motivates us to practice, rehearse, and perform. So you can see here that there's a lot of different kind of topics. These can be helpful to present to students and just to get them going on some ideas. Radio broadcasting, right? I've done this here with students where they developed different radio shows, okay, different podcasts, whether it's about talking about the weather or interviewing each other or talking about culture or a skill that they would like to share. So, these kinds of things can be a fun way for students to, again, showcase what they know and apply skills and content that they're learning. So I'm just looking here. So at the chat, so awesome. Okay, create a career research fair. Excellent. We had students produce commercials. Well, I'm going to show you some commercials here as well. So creating a video for the school, fantastic. Modeling a business plan, pitch, and presenting to class like Shark Tank style. That's great. And then Nicole says, I have a presenter come in every Friday and cook with the students and they learn about nutrition. Nicole, I want to come to your class. That's awesome. Great. And Sean, city planning, community service, human rights, democratic processes, elections. Sean, you're amazing. Thank you. Thank you all for sharing that. Okay, so we can see here how we can align Bloom's taxonomy with PBL design, right? And it's funny that you all talk about commercials, creating commercials. Here's one using with public service announcements. So you can see, remember, and recall. We can make sure that that to question, to be authentic, using notes to review a topic on creating a PSA, for example. Okay, so that can be the activity. For comprehension analysis, inquiry, student voice, comprehension questions for discussion, application, student voice, again, authenticity, select, brainstorm, and outline a PSA, for example. So maybe, analyze and evaluate. So analyze examples of PSAs based on their topic. So I'm gonna, if we have time, I don't know if we do, but I had some PSAs drawn up here, but you can very easily just go to the internet, to YouTube, and look at PSAs to draw up and to analyze together with the class, use it for language development, use it for production and digital literacy skills. So, analyzing model examples. Some of you have already done this in your classes, so you can use student-produced examples for the next class. We have evaluate and create. So, create a PSA script, outline, give, receive feedback using questions, checklists, rubrics. Create, critique and revision, practice in groups presenting PSAs for feedback. And then obviously, again, create a public product. So present PSA for other groups and staff. So, this can be done in person, role playing. It can be done by recording them and sharing them digitally as well. And just a project planning checklist here, right, for you to utilize. So what's the topic? What are the rubrics, right, that you're presenting? What are some model examples? What are some tools for student planning that can be graphic organizers? What skills are you applying here, whether it be language skills, literacy skills, math, GED? What standards or competencies can we tie in? What are roles and responsibilities? I just want to show that, talking about roles and responsibilities, I'm going to share this here with you all. This is a really nice example here of some cards, okay, some role cards. So this is like summarizer, your job as a summarizer. You can start your conversation with, all right? And so this gives like really nice roles and then your kind of role responsibility, and then ways that they can engage, language that they can use, right? So as a questioner, as a designer or artist, as a clarifier, of course you can make your own cards that are appropriate for the task, reader, checker. So I'm going to post this as well. This is the article that I got it from Group Work That Works, and so that article is a very quality article as well. And then finally, project-based learning and any learning is rigorous, right? It demands more of students to apply greater critical thinking, cooperation, and collaboration. It's not easy, right? These skills take time to develop, and there's going to be plenty of mistakes, difficulties, frustrations, and breakthroughs along the way. But perhaps the greatest skill we can cultivate in our classes is not to produce a product or performance or even to get a certain grade, but to understand and to stay engaged in the process of learning. So as the prominent philosopher, psychologist, and educational reformer John Dewey stated, students learn what they do. Education is a social process. Education is growth. Education is not preparation for life, but is life itself. So with that, here is just this project-based teaching practices. Again, just basically a graphic that goes along that can help you with your designing and planning. Okay, I just wanted to take a moment for any questions. Maybe I'll have an answer. And just know you're always welcome to contact us. You can contact me directly or through IPDAE. If you have any questions, again, this presentation will be available on the IPDAE website within 48 hours. You're welcome, Sean. I hope that was, you can only text Anthea. So if you want to either post a question or message in the webinar chat, you can, or in the Q&A. But you can always, again, sometimes I know ideas or questions come later. You can always reach out to us and we'll be here for you. Thank you, Pamela. I appreciate that feedback. Thank you, everyone. Okay, everyone, listen, thank you again for your time and attention. Before we go here, please give IPDAE your feedback on my presentation. That's very much appreciated. Mark your calendars. The next presentation is going to be March 25th. So we're taking a little break for spring break, but it's going to be a Tech Tuesday on March 25th at 1 p.m. Eastern. And the topic is Next Steps with Tableau, Enhancing Your Data Visualization Skills, Part 2. Okay, so don't give me feedback on my pronunciation of Tableau. Okay, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but please give me feedback on if the resources and the information was useful to you all. Again, thank you for your time and for being here and for your leadership in your own life, in your own professional growth, and those of your colleagues and students as well. Thank you, Chad. Tableau.